What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. Tonight is the Q&A, so get your questions in. Tell us how you feel. If you guys have comments, leave them in the chat. I'll display some on the screen. I'll answer all your questions tonight. But before I do that, I want to invite you guys to subscribe to the Wolverine.com today. Our most recent promo just ended. You can get a subscription if you're a new member for $99 for the entire year. So $99 gets you access to premium insider recruiting information, team information, basketball recruiting, NIL, transfer portal, and so much more. Plus, you get to be part of a great message board community with more than 8,000 unique individual users. If you're already a subscriber to the Wolverine.com, that's completely fine. Right now, you can gift a subscription to someone. So, for example, my wife's birthday is coming up, and if I theoretically wanted to gift her a subscription, I could. You can do that for 6 months for $40 or get them an entire $75. So again, already a member and you have a friend or a relative that you to join the community, you can do that by getting a gift subscription for $40 for 6 months or $75 for an entire year. If you haven't already done so, make sure to like this video. It helps us get in front of other Michigan fans. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. The more we grow, the more conversation we can have with more users asking questions. I am answering every question tonight, but if you do feel like you're in a good mood and want to donate some money to us, that money goes straight to our travel budget and you get to skip the line. So hit that button or the little money symbol and you can donate to our travel budget so we can see recruits across the country. And it looks like we already have a super chat from Rocky Furha, who actually donated basically $7 there. So shout out to Rocky for getting in with a super chat early on. And he says, "Is there some legitimacy to the claim that Aaron Scott and Bryce West don't see themselves playing at the same school?" They've talked a lot about playing together at the same school. Sometimes, obviously, package deals don't work out, and I don't think they've talked about being a package deal. I think Scott and West are going to make the best decisions for themselves if they both end up at the same school or don't. It's going to be an individual decision on each end. I do think that Michigan has a better shot with Aaron Scott. You still see Ohio State with a very commanding lead on the On3 recruiting prediction machine, 95.9% chance of him landing in Columbus. Of course, Ohio State gets the last OV, but Michigan did some really quality work on its official visit over the weekend. I think this race is very, very close, but obviously that visit to Columbus is scary. When you look at Bryce West, I still, even though he might come back in for an unofficial visit this week after making an OV earlier this month, I still feel like his heart is with Ohio State. Um, with those Glenville connections, it's going to be really, really tough to beat the Buckeyes. I could see one landing at Michigan and one landing at Ohio State. I could see them landing at the same school. So I don't think, one's decision is going to determine the other. For example, if Bryce West commits first, I don't think that'll deter Aaron from the school he picks or, make him commit to the same school that Bryce picks. So overall, I think they're going to make their own individual decisions. You see Bryce West profile now on the screen, 97.2% chance of him landing at Ohio State. I still feel like the Buckeyes lead. I've said all cycle. I think Michigan's going to have a better Scott. I think if they pull out Bryce West, I mean, that would absolutely be amazing. I think there's a slight chance there. But again, I think there is a better chance with Aaron Scott. And obviously, the dream is to get both. But Michigan does have some other plans at the cornerback position in case they do miss on one or both. They're obviously bringing in Jameer Grimsley this weekend. They're bringing in Ryan Nichols this weekend as well. So those are definitely some other names to know on the corner board. So shout out to everybody that's filing in. Remember, this is the Q&A show, so get your questions in. I am here to answer all your questions. If you missed our Tuesday show with Zach Libby yesterday, definitely go ahead and join that Tuesday show. Watch the replay and show us some love there. But let's go ahead and go down to Justin Corton. And he says, "Is there any chance that Aaron Scott and Bryce West don't commit after this weekend and push it until signing day. Scott said last year's game versus Ohio State was impactful for him, so maybe get him back for the game. So good question here, Justin. As things stand today, both are planning to make their decisions probably late June or early mid July. I don't think either wants to take it into the season. Now, that's not to say that things can't change once they do commit. If one goes to Ohio State or both go to Ohio State, I don't think Michigan will stop recruiting. They've beaten Ohio State in back to back years. If they beat Ohio State again for a third time at the big house, I mean, anything can happen. So I wouldn't completely rule any out on signing day, but as far as actual decision timelines, I would be a little surprised if they take it into the fall. Both have seemed pretty comfortable with making decisions right after official visits. And that goes for a lot of prospects across the country. I think you're seeing the majority of guys shut things down after official visits. But again, if Michigan continues to find success on the field, if they're in the game undefeated and beat Ohio State for a third time, that could certainly open some eyes. Justin also came back with another question. He says, any news on Brian Robinson? I know it seemed like he was trending to Kentucky, but if we miss on Darian Mayo, is there a strong chance that we can get Robinson? Um, N no, I think with Darian Mayo, look, he canceled his visit. He's probably off the board. Looking at Brian Robinson, obviously Kentucky has the lead on the on-3 recruiting prediction machine, but he was a guy that was leaning towards Michigan for a long time. Many expected Robinson to jump on board and join the 2024 class in Ann Arbor. Obviously, that didn't happen. They did bring him in for an OV to kick off the month of June. But look, even with Mayo canceling his visit and likely ending up at Clemson or somewhere else, I still think it's likely going to be four edge recruits in this class. And right now, it's Devin Baxter, who just committed, Jacob Smith, who's making his second visit of the month this weekend, Dominic Nichols, who is trending heavily towards Michigan on the on-3 recruiting prediction machine, and Elias Rudolph, who is also trending heavily to Michigan on the on-3 recruiting prediction machine and will announce its decision on July 3rd. Unless Michigan misses on one of the three remaining targets, so Smith, Nichols, or Rudolph, I don't see Brian Robinson ending up in this class. Now, if Michigan does miss on one of those three guys, if Nichols goes somewhere else, or Rudolph surprises and picks someone else, or Jacob Smith decides to pick Nebraska over Michigan, then yes, I could see them circling back to Brian Robinson and making a push and getting him into class. But as things stand today, I think the other guys are simply ahead on the board. Let's go ahead and go down to Jeff M. And he says, it appears that the 2024 recruiting class is much stronger on the offensive side of the ball. After missing on Chiles and Carter, can Michigan have a top 10 defensive class if they don't Bryce West or Aaron Scott? That's an interesting question. Well, you look at the defensive line commits, and most of those guys are three-star guys. They're still shooting their shot with Justin Scott, but Michigan playing from behind there. Scott made an OV to Miami over the weekend, and the Hurricanes still appear to be the leaders there. When you look at the edge board, you have Jacob Smith, who's more in that low four-star range. Dominic Nichols, kind of the same thing. Elias Rudolph, kind of the same area. Beasley on 300 prospect at the linebacker position. He's really the only active there, but he's on the back half of the on 300. And then when you look at secondary recruiting, assuming they, like your question says, they miss on Bryce West and Aaron Scott, it's not a guarantee that they can get a Jameer Grimsley. He's more likely to stay south. So you have Ryan Nichols, maybe, and somebody else. And then, you hope that you can get a Jordan Johnson Rubel or a Zaquan Patterson at the safety spot. So there aren't a lot of super highly touted guys. Zaquan Patterson would obviously be an amazing land. He's a top 100 prospect on the industry ranking. So I'm not sure if that would qualify as a top 10 class, but I think obviously missing out on Aaron Chiles really hurt that. Uh, Missing out on Darian Mayo really hurt that. So we'll see. Like I said, the bigger names, or the more highly ranked names like Jeremiah Beasley and Zaquan Patterson, Jordan Johnson, Tarian Nichols. Those are still high 4-star guys or top 300 guys. So that could potentially move them into the top 10 from just a pure defensive standpoint. We have Justin Courtney back with another question. He says, "Do you think Michigan is going to continue to recruit Boo Carter and Aaron Childs, or move on since the class is already so big, considering the players expected to commit?" They'll continue to recruit Boo Carter. Look, I think that Boo was very close on his decision. Obviously, Michigan finished second there, but they gave him a lot to think about. They hit a home run on his official visit. He's good friends with Jacob Oden and some of the other commits. Michigan's able to get an Aaron Scott or a Bryce West. They would obviously help in peer recruiting Boo Carter. So I don't think the Carter one is completely over. I think if Michigan has a big season, that's going to give him something to think about. I think the commits are still going to be relentless in pursuing him. He still has a really strong bond with Steve Klinkscale. I said it throughout the process, but I thought Steve Klinkscale did the best job recruiting Carter out of any coach, even though he decided to stay home and side with the Volunteers. I still felt like Klinkscale did a tremendous job in this recruitment. So, I still think there's a chance with Boo Carter. When it comes to Aaron Childs, though, I think they'll keep in contact with him, but I don't think they'll be all in trying to flip him unless Aaron Childs shows more interest later on in the cycle. If he's like, hey, I really, really do want to come to Michigan. I want to check out, or I want to use my official visit since he's not going to come in this weekend. Maybe they'll think about it down the line. But as things stand right now, I think they're going to be going harder after Boo Carter for a flip than they would be going after Aaron Childs, especially with the way that situation played out. It just seemed to, rub people the wrong way. Let's go ahead and go down to Mitchell M. And he says, predict the rest of the secondary class. So that's definitely a tough one, Mitchell, just because there are so many moving parts. I don't think I can really predict the secondary class right now. When you look at Aaron Scott and Bryce West, those are the key guys on the corner board. What their decisions end up being is going to determine what the secondary class looks like. So, ideally they get both. More realistically, they get one. I think if they can get Aaron Scott, then and they can close with Ryan Nichols this weekend, that would be a really good cornerback duo. If for some reason they miss on Aaron Scott and Bryce West, then if you can still get to Ryan Nichols, that's great. But there would still be an opening for another corner spot, and I think Michigan would have to circle back with some guys, wait for some late risers as seniors. So it would be interesting to see who they go after there. Obviously, they already have Jacob Oden committed on the back end. They're not going to stop recruiting Boo Carter. I think safety is really interesting. I think the Wolverines do have a shot with Zaquan Patterson, even though Miami is the heavy leader there. This unofficial visit this weekend could give him a lot to think about. The Wolverines are still in play with Jordan Johnson, Rubel. um, Texas is considered the leader there. They're getting him on campus this weekend, so that one's going to be a tough pool, but they are still in the mix there. If they miss on those guys, they could circle back to a Nigel Maynard who just committed to Pitt. So, like I said, just so many moving parts in the secondary. A lot's really going to depend on if Michigan's able to close with any of these big fish, if they're able to get Aaron Scott and Bryce West or one of them, if they're able to get Zaquan Patterson or Jordan Johnson, Rubel, that's really going to determine the secondary board. I think it'll clear up a little bit once we get past this weekend and see what happens with Weston Scott after their Ohio State visits. Let's go ahead and take a quick break, real quick. We're gonna shout out one of our sponsors. We're gonna shout out the sponsor of our Wednesday night recruiting show, Lewis Jewelers, a longtime partner of the Wolverine and the Wolverine.com. Simple question, guys. Have you taken care of that gift for the special woman in your life? If the answer is no, the great news is Lewis Jewelers can help. It's stress free and easy working with one of their non commission, expert trusted advisors, finding that perfect diamond for you. Stop by today, guys, and take care of the wise mothers and grandmothers in your life. If you don't have a special woman, you can get a gift for yourself. Lewis Jewelers is your diamond store and so much more since 1921. Visit them at their new location, 300 South Maple Road, Ann Arbor, or online at lewisjewelers.com. That's lewisjewelers.com, where Ann Arbor gets engaged. I see we have more than 100 people watching live right now. Make sure to like this video, it helps us get in front of other Michigan fans, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. You get alerts every time we drop a new video, and we're dropping daily content, not just with recruiting, but also with team coverage and basketball and all that good stuff. Let's get back to the questions. Let's go to Baby and Bump. And he says, am I wrong for not caring if we get Boo or Chiles? We tend to develop whoever we get. Ben Herbert is the best. Hashtag coaching staff is the best. Um, I don't think you're necessarily wrong. I mean, there if you think about it, there are no must lands in recruiting. I know we like to use that buzzword when we write recruiting stories and things of that nature, but look, I mean, I don't think Boo Carter is as big of a miss as Aaron Childs. I mean, he can find guys in the secondary. Next year, 2025 is absolutely loaded on the back end. So Clink's gonna find guys in 2025. You already have Chris Ewald committed. So I'm not as worried about missing out on Boo Carter, who's more of a Swiss Army knife in the secondary as opposed to, a 5-star level corner or something like that. I do think that Aaron Childs hurts though. He was such a big priority. He was a big fit or a great fit in Michigan's defensive scheme. I mean, that was a tough, tough loss, especially with how many resources they invested there. I thought he was, Junior Colson 2.0. I thought he would be a plug and play guy that would just basically replace him and get significant time as a true freshman. So, yeah, I think, if you're going to care about one, I would care more about missing out on Aaron Childs. That was a tough pill to swallow all around. But look, Michigan is in a strong spot for Jeremiah Beasley. If they get him, obviously he's another great fit for the defense. And then I think Michigan, did a really good job of scouting guys and finding guys that Ben Herbert can mold into really good players at the linebacker position. Cole Sullivan's an intriguing athlete. Jaden Smith is an intriguing athlete. So, um, yeah, I mean, I definitely get your point of view, though. Let's go ahead and to Rocky Fura, and he says, I heard Taylor Tatum is trending to Oklahoma. Michigan should have made Micah Kapana wait. Yeah, it was kind of surprising today. I actually switched my prediction from USC to Oklahoma. Oklahoma has had success with multi-sport athletes in the past, including recently with Kyler Murray being, a high MLB prospect and a number one overall draft pick in the NFL. So that was certainly a selling point. Taylor Tatum. In hindsight, you kind of see that and you're like, oh, I wonder if Michigan could have made that move on its official visit this weekend. But look, Mike Hart really, really likes Micah Kapana. He rushed for more than 1,000 yards on just 70 carries. Now, I love Taylor Tatum. He's ranked as the number one running back in the country for a reason. He would have been a great program fit. I mean, it would have been the new Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum with Jordan Marshall and Taylor Tatum. But I still think there's a chance that it can be that. Like Micah Kaapana, again, more than 1,000 yards on 70 carries at national powerhouse Bishop Gorman. He didn't really take hold of the true starting job until closer to the end of his junior season. I think Kapana's in for a big rankings bump as a senior. If he gets double the carries or just even a third more carries, I feel like he's in for a monster senior year. I feel like he'll rise up the rankings, especially on that national stage. He complements Jordan Marshall well. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He has really good speed. He's a little more of an all-purpose back, uh, kind of in the mold of a Cole Cabana. So yeah, I think he'll complement Jordan Marshall well. It would have been cool to see Michigan wait for Taylor Tatum to make the visit just to see if anything was shake there. But Mike Hart is a guy that really trusts his evaluations, and he um, was enamored with Capana's game. And I told you guys, if you subscribe to the Wolverine, or I put in a prediction for Capana going into his official visit, and I said, don't think that Mike Hart's not going to take this guy, even with Taylor Tatum scheduled for an official visit. He will take this dude. That's how much he liked Micah Capana. Hart flew down to Vegas, personally offered him during the spring evaluation period, and he pushed to close with him. I think Michigan fans are more upset about losing Tatum than Mike Hart is. I think Mike Hart is pretty happy with a dynamic duo of Jordan Marshall, Taylor Tatum. Can you make the argument that Michigan should have waited because they likely would have anyway? Yeah, definitely that argument, but I don't think Mike Hart wanted to take any chances. I think he lost on of being his type of guy and went ahead and pushed for a commitment on that OV, and obviously the announcement came soon after that. Let's go down to Go Blue 81, and he says, still scratching my head on why chose over Michigan out of the blue. Heard their NIL isn't much better than any insight. Should we be worried about others doing the same? NIL era, there's always going to be these change of direction, recruitments happen in an instant. Anything can change. I mean, you saw that last cycle when Michigan was involved with recruitments that had Miami as well. Um, when it comes to Florida's NIL, it's interesting. You had that whole saga with Jaden Rashada. It looks like they're trying to rise back up in the NIL sphere. They had a big string of commitments. Like, it wasn't just Aaron Chiles shocked the world and picked Florida over Michigan. Like, they had back to back to back to back big time lands. I think they moved up to like number 2 in the country in the national recruiting rankings. So yeah, I do think NIL played a big role. The string of commitments played a role. So, I think it was just one of those things. Hey, it's recruiting. Sometimes you have twists and turns, and especially now in this era that we're in, where NIL can just change things on a dime. Nothing would really surprise me. Let's go ahead and go down to Go Blue 81 has another question. Actually, he says, "Are we going to be able to get Ross official made his top 5 without a visit yet?" So, Go Blue 81's talking about Jay Sean, 4-star out of Missouri. He is on Michigan's recruiting board. I think was just for show. Let's go down to Rayos Blith, and he says, "I'm here in Texas and hearing Tatum like Michigan. I think if he goes to visit, he could get to Michigan." So shout out to my Texas native, Rayos. But no, I don't think that intel is correct. Taylor Tatum has canceled his official visit. He started trending to Oklahoma today. I think that dream is over. Go Blue 81 is back with another question. And remember, if you have a question and you want to leapfrog, you can hit that little money symbol. That's a super chat. It helps you skip the line. Let's go to Go Blue 81. Here we go. He says, "Are you more worried about Jeremiah Beasley to Missouri or Elias Rudolph?" That should say Rudolph, not Randolph, to Pitt. Not worried. I'm equally not worried about either one. When we're talking about Jeremiah Beasley, on 300 linebacker out of Belleville, Michigan. Look, he's been to Michigan on several visits, including his official visit last weekend. I think the Wolverines are in a strong spot to close. Something interesting that you learned if you're a Wolverine.com subscriber is that Beasley made several secret visits to Michigan this year to connect with new linebackers coach Chris Partridge. So, on top of all the public visits he made, he was also on campus in incognito mode. So, yeah, he's been to Michigan so many times. I think Michigan State is a bigger threat than Missouri, but honestly, I'm not worried about either. The Wolverines have the lead on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. I have a prediction in for Michigan and feel very confident following this official visit. We'll see if anything happens with Missouri on his official visit there this weekend. Remember, Beasley is set to commit on June 29, and like I said, I still like Michigan there. When it comes to Elias Rudolph and Pitt, um, with today's Darian Mayo news, I actually checked in with a couple of program sources. They're still feeling really good about Michigan and their chances of landing Rudolph. I think Ohio State was probably that big threat, and he canceled that official visit. He took an OV to Miami, but nothing really came out of that. I know he really likes Pitt. He has a chance to be a big fish in a small pond. They've made him a top priority. Pitt is actually doing a pretty decent job of recruiting this cycle in Pitt. Um, so yeah, I think maybe they could give him something to think about over these next couple of weeks. But the confidence and optimism coming out of Ann Arbor with Elias Rudolph, I think Michigan lands him 91.1% chance there, and I have a prediction in as well. Let's go down to John A. Schultz, and he says, how does Tavian St. Clair's Ohio State offer affect the 2025 recruitment of Bryce Underwood? He's been crystal balled to the Bucks. Does OSU think they can get both? Are they still a big threat for Underwood? Um, that's a good question. So Tavian St. Clair, for those of you guys that don't know, four-star quarterback out of the state of Ohio, is trending towards Ohio State. There are several predictions for him. Um, yeah, I think Ohio State's going to continue to recruit Bryce Underwood even if they do get St. Clair. Could they get both? You know, it's always tough to get two highly touted quarterbacks in one class, but with Underwood being a guy that just really doesn't care about competition, or at least that's what he says, I don't know if he would have a problem with being part of a two quarterback class. In fact, I've said Michigan should take Bryce Underwood and somebody else just because they haven't landed. You know, we're talking about Michigan, not Ohio State here. Michigan hasn't landed an elite quarterback in back-to-back cycles. They took two, they had two project years before they landed a really good prospect in Jaden Davis this cycle. So I think Michigan should take two quarterbacks this cycle. I think if you're able to get Bryce Underwood, you should land him and you should get somebody else on board too. Maybe Ohio State is thinking the same thing. 2024 was an especially weak year at the quarterback position. So, the Buckeyes got Aaron Nolan, but he's a lefty, and, you always have to make adjustments for that. I think maybe Ohio State would like two quarterbacks as well. St. Clair's a really good prospect. Michigan just offered him, but obviously Bryce Underwood is the big fish. I think both Michigan and Ohio State will press for Bryce Underwood while still recruiting other quarterbacks. So, Ohio State likes Tavian St. Clair and Ryan Montgomery. Michigan likes Tavian St. Clair and Ryan Montgomery. In fact, both St. Clair and Ryan Montgomery camped with Michigan and then camped with Ohio State like the next day. So they're both quarterbacks to keep an eye on, whether you're a Michigan fan or an Ohio State fan. It looks like we have Ohio State fans in the chat. So shout out to them. Let's go ahead and go down to Rayos Blith. He says, could Michigan still take three running backs? No, I think with Taylor Tatum trending away, I think they're completely fine with Jordan Marshall and Micah Kapana. They'll use those resources elsewhere. We're winding down, guys. It looks like we got 140 people in the live show. We're about to end. So if you have a question, make sure to hit that comment box, type in your question, and I'll answer it before we get out of here. But we are on the final minute here. Let's go to M, and he says, how can Michigan overcome the NIL for other schools to land elite recruits? Well, that's the big question. Look, Michigan's never going to be Miami. They're never going to be Oregon. They're not going to do that. They're not going to make upfront guarantees and give upfront money. Now, they are trying to do something with Empower. If you haven't heard, that's Michigan's new NIL internship empowerment program. Jim Harbaugh has gone to multiple cities to promote it. They've made a big presentation on official visits this month. it's not just NIL, it's also, like I said, internships, opportunities after football, and that's resonated really well. But it's still not what these other teams do. So I don't know if Michigan's ever going to try to combat it. I think Michigan's just going to continue to try to recruit at the level they are recruiting, which is still really good. Michigan has a top 5 class right now, number 5 for the On3 industry recruiting rankings. Try to find those culture fit, cultural in a place like Michigan. That's why they've beaten Ohio State in back-to-back years. That's why they've, gone back-to-back cycles, making the college football playoffs. So they're going to try to find those high-level guys that also fit the culture. And if that means they have to miss on some 5 stars, that's what it means. It's just, Michigan's not going to play the same game as Miami and Oregon, some of these other schools. All right, guys, we've the 30 minutes. I think that might have actually been the last question. Are any others? We do have one last question, and it comes from John A. Schultz, who also said, at least these Ohio State fans in the chat are not crazy like those Notre Dame fans. Yeah, we had the Ohio State fans in the chat yesterday, and they were pretty tame. So, I was actually called a Buckeye lover this week on Twitter. So I wouldn't say I'm that, but definitely respect Ohio State fans more than I do Notre Dame fans. The Irish are just a bunch of weirdos. I'm surprised they didn't join the chat this week since they're extremely crazy. But let's go to John Schultz, who has the last question, and he says, how many total players will Michigan take in 2024? Will this class be over 30, maybe close to 35? Is that even possible? It is possible. I've gotten this question a lot. So, how will Michigan take over 25, which is usually the standard for a recruiting class? In the age of NIL, you can put transfers on NIL, or like guys that would be moved from walk ons to scholarships. You can put them on NIL. So, while Michigan doesn't do pay for play or upfront pay for play, they do have a good NIL program for the actual football team. So, they can put transfers on that NIL path as long as you meet the scholarship limit from the team side, you're fine. Like I said, not all of those guys need to be on scholarship. They can be on an NIL package, and you don't have to count them against the scholarship. So Michigan's losing a lot of players, one, so they always had an opportunity to take a big class. But with NIL potentially paying for some transfers, then that opens the door for even more guys this cycle. So I do think Michigan will hit 30. How much over that they go, I'm not so sure. But I do think it'll probably be in between 30 and 35, probably on the lower end of that. And it looks like KS in a question here, and he says, any update on Bennett Warren on 300 offensive linemen out of Fort Bend Christian? So Michigan obviously trending with Michael Weenie after a strong visit. He could be the 6th offensive lineman this cycle. But we've been told not to completely rule out Bennett Warren just yet. I know it sounds a little crazy to potentially take 7 linemen. I think it's a little much. Usually I would say you can never have too many offensive tackles, but I think in this case, 7's getting up there. But Michigan still has the lead on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. Look, he's already visited Texas A&M, and it didn't look like they moved the needle enough. Like, he still named Michigan his leader after visiting Texas A&M. Then he visited Oklahoma, and from what I was able to gather on that side, Oklahoma didn't really move the needle enough to gain some predictions. Now he has Tennessee. They will get his last official visit. They've made a late run. So I think we'll know more after this Tennessee visit. If Michigan does close with Michael Weenie as expected, I think they'll have a tough decision to make on whether to take Bennett Warren if he wants in or not. But if he does want in, I'm not sure Sharon Moore passes him up. I think they could very well make room for a 7th offensive lineman. So it'll be interesting to see if the Tennessee visit moves the needle for him, or if Texas A&M or Oklahoma make up some ground here before he makes a decision. So that's kind of the latest with Bennett Warren. Still kind of an unclear picture with the recent movement with Michael Weenie. But appreciate everybody that joined tonight. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is completely free. Make sure to sign up for the Wolverine.com today for 1 year, $99. We will be back next week recapping Michigan's final official visit weekend. It's been a busy month in June, so we're looking forward to that. I hope you guys have a great Wednesday night.